See, I would say the dead. And when you emailed me to ask me if I'd do the show, I went with my gut. So you sort of said, it's about a special relationship in your life. And the
Mm.
first thing I thought, maybe it's being a goth, because I've got very pale skin and very dark hair, and I'm always assumed to be a goth. But I certainly in the last 15 years, it's it's an ever more present force in my life. But then
Mm.
when you and I were emailing a bit, I
Mm.
realized actually it's quite a consistent force in my life. And yes, I'm obsessed with the past. I'm obsessed with Troy. I'm obsessed
Yeah.
with Neanderthals. It turns out I am very Neanderthal. And so I've always wanted to write a piece about how I identify as a Neanderthal, but I don't want it to seem like a satire of identity politics because I am very woke. But the past feels very present to me and very real in a way that the present itself doesn't always feel that real or convincing. Maybe it's another depressive thing to be constantly thinking on the past, not necessarily your own. I don't know. So yeah, I remember going to see my little brother, who's 4 years younger, was very badly bullied, and he was in reception, and the teacher put him in the bin. He had dyslexia. She put him in the bin, and Christians, and said that's where rubbish goes.
Oh,
And
oh
we
my
only
Lord.
found out because another child started having nightmares and had to see a psychiatrist. And her great fear was, I don't want to be X, my brother. So I was only 8, but I went to see her and told her she had behaved disgustingly and that she had to change her ways, and that maybe she should reconsider and not be a teacher. And the way we mourned was radically different and led to an explosive argument a week after my mother's death because the boys were doing it one way and I was one of the boys in that sense, and the girls were doing it another way. And they thought we were animals and we thought, I think by the time, so that was my mother's death. By the time my father died, I think we'd all realized that in a crisis, we were all going to behave in radically different ways, and it was all right, and not to judge. But it's very hard if you think it's got to be dealt with one way, and it's something as potent as death. And the only thing I learned really is this is my one bumper sticker piece of wisdom is whatever you're doing, it's the right thing.
Hello and welcome to How to Have Extraordinary Relationships podcast. It's a podcast where we look at all sorts of things with all sorts of people. It's been described by someone famous as a dinner party where you get to listen to an interesting guest. And today's interesting guest, and she really, 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 really is interesting, and I happen to know that, is Hannah Betts.
Hello.
Hello, Hannah. Thank you for coming on the podcast. So I'm just going to introduce Hannah because she is a journalist and many of you may know her in all sorts of different guises. She's an award-winning feature writer, an interviewer, a columnist. She's a leader writer. She's been in many, many newspapers and magazines, mainly the Times and The Telegraph, the Times and The Telegraph. She's been a journalist for over 3 decades. A deputy chief leader writer, freelance, and you really cover all aspects of the zeitgeist and you sort of pop up regularly. And I first came across you, I can't remember, you writing about beauty, I think, when you first
I do
popped
do a
up.
bit of that. I do. I suppose as a depressive, probably a lot of people now tell me I've got ADHD, and who knows, can't afford to get diagnosed. But I see it more as a depressive. I need to keep fascinated by things and
Mm.
distracted and
Yeah.
busy, and I like my serious stuff and my cultural stuff and my zeitgeist stuff and whatever. But I also love beauty and frippery and distraction and pleasure and joy. So I'm
Yeah.
really lucky because most people have to specialize.
Yes, and we're going to go into some interesting places today, but I just want to say something else.
Mm.
You always look amazing. I don't
Oh,
quite know how to describe you. You look like sort of Mary Poppins. You wear beautiful, amazing vintage clothes. And Hannah and I were at a party, and I revealed I never bought anything in a secondhand shop before, clothing-wise, and you nearly fainted.
yeah, what? How is that? We are going shopping.
Yeah.
But actually,
So
it's also that I've got a vinted addiction. And I haven't had a drink for 11 years and now I cane vinted.
yes, we started drinking and got vintage. But
Mm.
today we're going to talk about the dead. Halloween is coming up. Halloween special. We're going to talk about the dead. We're going to talk about death. We're going to talk about your relationships with that because you're very fascinating on your relationship with, how would you describe it? Death, ghosts, different periods of time, the past.
Honestly, I would say the dead. And when you emailed me to ask me if I'd do the show, I went with my gut. So you sort of
Mm.
said, it's about a special relationship in your life. And the
Mm.
first thing I thought, maybe it's being a goth, because I've got very pale skin and very dark hair, and I'm always assumed to be a goth. Um, but I certainly in the last 15 years, it's it's an ever more present force in my life. But then
Mm.
when you and I were emailing a bit, I
Mm.
realized actually it's quite a consistent force in my life. And yes, I'm obsessed with the past. I'm obsessed with Troy. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with Neanderthals. It turns out I am very Neanderthal. And so I've always wanted to write a piece about how I identify as a Neanderthal, but I don't want it to seem like a satire of identity politics because I am very woke. But the past feels very present to me and very real in a way that the present itself doesn't always feel that real or convincing. Maybe it's another depressive thing to be constantly thinking on the past, not necessarily your own. I don't know.
So tell me about being a Neanderthal first. What do you mean that I mean, do you like foraging or
Well, apparently, I mean, it, they're, I mean, the one bit that doesn't fit is they're very fit, and I'm not that fit. But it's one of those 23andMe things. And it turned out my father, who was a genius, a neuropsychiatrist and very eminent, he, I think, was twice as much as me, Neanderthal. And I think I'm twice as much as a normal person.
right?
And I've even got a ridge. But funnily enough, the
Oh,
more
you've actually got a physical, you've still got that sort of
I mean, yeah, knuckles dragging on the floor, Lucy, basically. But for me, it's also about being an alcoholic. Apparently, that's a Neanderthal thing.
ah,
Gloomy. They're quite gloomy. Anyway,
yeah.
I don't know. It's probably just a lovely story. But I did look up on 23andMe what the what characteristics came along with this Neanderthal thing, and depression and alcoholism were mentioned.
That's
Um,
very interesting.
Funny, isn't it? So it's sort of a joke, but also possibly true.
Possibly true. So you sent me a beautifully written, you do Substack, you're on Substack a lot, and you obviously think very deeply about things. Things are really important to you. And you sent me a wonderful 8-page sort of document with all these incredible stories in around your ancestors and your grandfather. Was it great grandfather whose arm was broken by a swan? And
He had two metal arms. So first of all, it was broken by a swan, and then he had two metal arms. But I realized that had led quite a lot to my atheism and my first thoughts about death, which is why I sent it to you.
mm,
Um, because I'm not trying to sound clever here, but I genuinely have been an atheist since I was 4. And there was this sort of weird cluster whereby my grandfather, great grandfather with the metal arms, died. And at the same time, I started junior school, which was a Church of England junior school. And it was the first time I had that indoctrination with Christianity. I had knowledge of it before, and it was quite odd and cult-like anyway, because all the children knew how to sing All Things Bright and Beautiful and things, and they knew how to pray, and they
Yeah.
knew, and it was very odd. And I remember being very confused because the baby Jesus was born at Christmas, and then I think it was an early Easter, and then I was told the baby, that some people had killed the baby, only the baby was a man. And I mean,
Is
this
that
may be
yes?
the beginning of my scorn for Christianity, but this coinciding with my grandfather dying and my thinking, well, the arms aren't going to heaven. Will any of the rest of him be going? I remember just thinking about death a lot when I was that age and really kind of working through it. I remember thinking about it in the day, at weekends. I remember thinking about it at night. I was always an insomniac. And just kind of working it through and thinking, A, I can't believe in this Christianity business. And B, I think when you're dead, you're dead. And there's nothing afterwards. And I remember thinking about confronting the horror of it, which I think is very fundamental and human, of time will go on without me,
Mm,
but I won't go on, and I won't be going on with it. And when my mother was dying when I was 43, so 11 years ago, she that was her, she wouldn't talk about dying at all during the 6 months she was dying, which obviously was her right. But I was there one morning when the priest came to talk to her in the hospice. And, oh no, actually, it wasn't the priest, it was the nurse. And I don't know if they still do it, but they were doing that thing in hospices where they try and get you to confront your death. And this went down like magisterially badly with like most of the patients. I mean, really, it was not popular. And it's how I would want to do it, but it's not how most people wanted to do it in this Birmingham hospice. Anyway, after one of those moments when my mother wouldn't talk about how she felt about it, I was there and sort of said, what is it that is so unspeakable about
mm,
this? And she said, it's the idea that you'll all go on without me and I'll be history. And
mm.
I'm not trying to say, oh, I'm so much cleverer than her or I'm so much
No, no, I
more
get that.
developed.
I get that.
But I found it very moving because those were precisely, I mean, it's very moving anyway, but they were also precisely the thoughts I'd been battling with when I was a child. And they are very emotional. And it's quite odd that I didn't talk to anyone about it at this time. I was a very serious, I mean, you're probably getting this, Lucy, that I was quite a
No,
serious child. I wasn't very childlike. I
no,
didn't like
like
other children.
Wednesday Adams. No.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And no wonder I didn't have many friends or I mean the teachers didn't like me either. I think I was overthinking everything and I could slightly see through teachers and things. And yeah, it doesn't make you very popular. It's better to be kind of bubbly and happy.
Yeah, bubbly and singing "We Plough the Fields and Scatter" and
Yeah, that wasn't me.
being a
And I was
dove,
always
being a
having kind of
brownie.
arguments about beliefs and I just wouldn't take any crap. And I mean, what I mean is crap ideas. I'm sure I took loads of crap, but I would stand up for what I believed in. And that is not very popular when you're young.
So you're four. And I mean, the other thing about your grandfather who lost both his arms, he became a bit of a celebrity, didn't
Who
he?
is this? So, I mean, it's a brilliant. I
Fascinating
haven't written
story.
about it actually, but I must. I think I'll write about it now before so that there's something for people to read when the
Yeah,
podcast comes
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
But so it was this terrible industrial accident in a printing press. And high drama, they were cut off, his arms were cut off if this bit's videoed here and here.
Yeah, so they're cut
And
off just below his shoulders.
yeah, and of course this meant no income for the family, a working class family in Birmingham and all sorts of horrors. But after the war, so it was in the 30s during the Depression. After the war, he became a bit of an amputee celebrity and would travel around the country showing our boys who'd come back limbless that they could have very full lives. And we had all his gardening equipment growing up, which was a bit like Edward Scissorhands.
Oh
You'd
God.
screw off, you'd screw off the hand and put on a gardening hoe. I mean, quite amazing objects to have as a child. So I used to imagine him with a kind of 12-foot wingspan. I mean, amazing. Um, but yeah, so he was quite. You can see why he made an impression, you know.
But was
Um,
it scary seeing your grandfather? I mean, when I was growing up, we used to go to a place called Captain Hook's Bar, which had a man that had a hook.
yes.
And of course, we'd all read pirate stories. So, but
Yeah,
I found it kind of obsessively fascinating, this
I guess
man with
it's
the
what
hook.
you grow up with, isn't it? I mean, it things seem no. I mean, I remember when I first had therapy in my 30s, and I remember a couple of times the therapist doing cartoon double takes when I told her a couple of things about relationships that I'd had, relationships with my mother actually, and you sort of, and I remember coming away and phoning our friend Sarah Vine or texting her and saying, oh, I thought that does this sound abnormal to you? And she messaged back and said, extremely abnormal. And I said, oh, I just needed to know because if that's what you grow up with, you don't know what is normal. And you know, you need to defamiliarize it a bit to be able to step back and see it as dysfunctional or non-normal. And I that actually has been something my whole life, even now with secrets, because my family was quite disinhibited, although they'd probably say that I am now the great disinhibited one. But I used to, with friends, even now, and with my partner, I'll sometimes, if they tell me something, I'll sometimes say, excellent, good. Is that a secret? Because it won't be clear to me. I almost need to, and then I can keep it. But because they were all a bit disinhibited emotionally and vocally and rhetorically, I need to know, then I can keep it. But the kind of normative boundaries aren't always obvious to me.
Right. So someone will tell you something and you're not sure. You'll go, is that, am I allowed to tell other people? Or do you
Well,
want me
I
to keep
just, it's
this?
almost like a box I need to tick
Yeah.
mentally. Um, and and yeah, I suppose that is quite unusual. I don't know. And then I'm fine with it. Then I can keep it, but I just need to know it is one.
I always say to people, don't say to me, I need to tell someone, don't tell anyone else. Don't tell me, go tell someone.
Back off.
Yeah, back off. I mean, no, I don't want to hold your secrets. If you tell me, be prepared for the fact it may not stay. You
Yeah. Well, I think that's good. They need to know the grounds
need
there.
to know the ground
Yeah,
rules about it. So
exactly.
going back to before, so this little girl, you go off to school, to a C of E school. I went to a local C of E school, and you're doing, the golden cockerel crows in the morning and all that
Mhm.
stuff, crows in the morning.
Oh my God, I'd forgotten that.
The
Yeah.
golden cockerel crows in the morning, we did that every day. And
I still have hymns in my head, even though I
yes.
never sang them because I was an atheist.
Oh, you didn't see, I sung all of them because I was a good little girl and I was a chorister and all that stuff. So you're a strange child, I think.
Mm. Yeah, as I say, I wasn't very popular.
Was
And
the
I
teenage
was always,
at 4 is radical.
I had this horrible thing with honesty as well. I remember when I was, so I've got four brothers and sisters. And honestly, I looked about 40. There are school photographs of me with the others, and it was always my responsibility to get them into the school photo. And in all the pictures, I honestly used to think that when I was 40, I'd look 4,000 because I look like a middle-aged I think it's partly why I don't have children because it was exhausting parenting as a child. And when I went to university, I felt a bit like one of those midlife mothers who says, oh, now I've got them off to university, I can have time for myself. Only I was the one going to university. So, yeah, I remember going to see my little brother, who's 4 years younger, was very badly bullied, and he was in reception, and the teacher put him in the bin. He had dyslexia. She put him in the bin, and Christians, and said that's where rubbish goes.
Oh
And I
my
only
Lord.
found out because another child started having nightmares and had to see a psychiatrist. And her great fear was, I don't want to be X, my brother. So I was only 8, but I went to see her and told her she had behaved disgustingly and that she had to change her ways and that maybe she should reconsider and not be a teacher. And that was not the only time I did that for him. And that makes me sound like someone quite assertive, and I wasn't. But if I thought something was wrong, I was. I mean, I was shy, I didn't talk, didn't go to parties. I wasn't one of those ta-da type children. But if something was wrong, I felt very strongly about doing something about it.
So
And
it's very interesting. You've got this right and wrong early on, but it's not around the
no,
teachings of the Bible or
no,
whatever.
it's pure egotism, Lucy.
No, no,
No,
it's
but I
about,
felt like I had to work it out for myself.
yeah,
And I still feel that. And, there's that, whatever that saying is about if there were a God, he'd quite like atheists, because I think we do have to build our own moral framework. I should say, she would like atheists. I think we do have to build our own moral framework. And it's often seen, I think atheism is seen as a gap, as a void.
yeah.
Actually, it's a very active intellectual space. It's not agnosticism, which is probably a void.
Yes, agnosticism is I'm not really going to make a decision around any of it.
Yeah, it's like I'll sit on this fence, and if this fence flies me to heaven, then, mine is much more. I mean, when my father, who was also an atheist, died, my little nephew, who was 7, was also at church school and was told that because his father was an atheist, he would now be burning eternally in hell. And I remember saying, "Well, Harry, I'll be joining him. You can join us if you want, but it'll be a lot more interesting down there." And I think I told you when my father died, we obviously didn't have any Christianity involved, but I put coins on his eyes for Karen. Not on his eyes, on his chest in a bag, so that he would have he would be able to pay Karen to get him across the sticks.
But that is
Um,
about belief, though.
it's about a belief in Homer and Virgil, isn't it? I mean, it's
Well,
about a
you
literary
see,
belief.
I'm because I'm obsessed with all that. I actually want, I kind of believe it. Of course,
Yeah.
'cause I
I
like, I mean, of course I don't believe it, but then part of me goes, well, I don't know.
It's as much a part of our classical upbringing as God. I mean, it's a more ancient part, and it's a story that means a lot to a lot of us. And it's a story that meant something to him. But equally, I buried him with Fear No More, the Heat of the Sun. I say buried, sorry, he was cremated. I also put Fear No More, the Heat of the Sun, Shakespeare, in his coffin because he loved Shakespeare and he read that at my mother's funeral. So, and it's funny, as I talk to you now, I've got some emotional support rocks. This is from the first of fourth. This is, I don't really know, but
Oh, it's
clearly very
beautiful.
significant. But also I've got these, which I got in the summer from the asylum. So they're a mental health thing from the asylum where Van Gogh killed himself. And that probably sounds quite dark, but actually I see them more as a triumph because he painted amazing paintings there. They were very nice to him. It kept him alive for as long as they could. And so I have these on my desk all the time, these little, what are they called?
Cones.
Oh, I've also got my mental health medal. There we are. I got it out for you.
Yeah, tell me about the mental health medal.
Well, I wish my father could have seen it. So my father was a psychiatrist and
Mm,
his father was a psychiatrist. And I got it for writing about mental health and writing about depression and
mm,
SSRIs. And until I was, well, I didn't, it takes a long, even if you're depressed forever, it takes a long time to admit it to yourself. And well, to
mm,
realize it's not even necessarily admit it to yourself, but to
mm,
realize. And
mm,
then it took a long time not to feel that as a kind of secret shame. Anyway, I eventually started writing about it, I think for The Telegraph, which is very good on mental health. In,
mm.
I think I was in my, oh, I don't know how old I was. I can find out for you. But, fairly late on, probably about 40, I don't know, 38. And I'd never written it before. And I think they called me and said, "Do you know anyone who has depression?" Because everyone always thinks I'm very jolly. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I sort of said, "Well, yeah, yeah, I do." And wrote about it for the first time. But I found it very liberating. Um, I suppose in AA, they always, I'm not in AA, but I admire it very much. I mean, because of the God thing, but I admire it very much and have learned a lot from it. And they always sort of talk about, I can't remember the buzz phrase, but it's something about secrets only having power over you when they're a secret. And as soon
Yeah.
as you
Yes,
unleash
that's right.
it, do you
Yes.
know what
Yeah.
that is?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't
yeah. No,
remember.
it is basically that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's
And
right.
they're like a balloon of horror and you pop them and then and probably some people do still judge me for writing about it. But I've also, I mean, there is such a need out there, and I've had letters from all over the world, from people thanking me for writing about it. And so I'm afraid I don't give a flying fuck if other people judge me for it. I am.
Why would they judge you for writing honestly about depression, which is so debilitating?
People do. The first time I wrote about it, a very close friend said that I shouldn't have done it. It was career limiting. Whereas actually, whenever I write about it, the one thing that always drags me out of it is work. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
absolutely.
working,
Yeah, yeah.
and work is the great deflection. Keeping busy, too busy, is the great way out. It's never got in the way of work. And actually, the only time I thought it might is when I went on happy pills, SSRIs, because I didn't want that to start happening. But actually, it's a great fueler of work. Actors talk about doctor theatre, that they'll be ill and then they go on stage and they feel fine. I would
Yeah.
talk about doctor journalism. Uh,
Yes.
it is everything for me. But my friend said, no, this was a disgraceful thing to write about. An older friend, a boomer, and you've worried your friends, and we're all very worried. Um,
Well, did you want to say, how come you're my friend and you didn't seem to notice this about me? Sorry to be rude.
no, and well, ironically, I think it did really help friends understand, for instance, why I'll have periods of kind of vanishing. So I'll have periods of looking like quite a bad friend.
Mm.
Um, and that I think that helped people realize. And I think even, but then this friend that I'm talking about who did judge me, she's so hardcore that actually it's generational, isn't it? She is an older boomer.
Yeah.
And there was one time when my boyfriend and I were having dinner with her, and we were talking about uh what's it called? Me Too. And I was saying what I always say on that topic, which is, as a Gen X, I'm really grateful to millennials for Me Too, because they defamiliarized a lot of behavior that my generation put up with,
Yeah.
and they empowered all of us to be able to put in
Call
a
it out.
boundary that should have been there.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very grateful. And she said she's much more of the Catherine Deneuve line of I enjoyed being flirted with, and said something so horrendous. She basically said, well, my father tried to rape me and it didn't do me any harm. Yeah, I know you've got your hands on your. I mean, I couldn't even speak, and
Oh
I
my
feel,
word. I mean, that's shocking. I'm sorry, that's
yeah, and
shocking.
I and it was actually worse than that. I won't go into awful detail, but my boyfriend and I were actually speechless. But it is a generational thing, and we talk about snowflakes. I think those snowflakes have done us a great favor.
Yeah,
Um,
I
I'm
agree.
a born again snowflake. Actually, my dog has a snowflake on her collar, so she's a snowflake. But good on
Not
them.
called Snowflake.
No, she's called Pimlico. Um,
Pimlico. My
Pimlico.
passport's a Pimlico. Or do you
She's.
live in
I
Pimlico?
used to live in Pimlico. For a long time, I was the Pimlico spinster, and but funnily enough, Pimlico gets recognised a lot now because she's been in the Times, the Telegraph, the Mail, and the Independent, and she's had a fashion. She was in the September issue of Harper's Bazaar, so people stop her on the street and say, "Is that Pimlico Betts?" So yeah, she's big, Lucy. What can I say? She's big.
So, I mean, you have become pretty well known.
Do you think? I
I
mean,
were you at the Pink? But I mean, yeah, I mean, you're as you said, you're a ubiquitous journalist.
people. I think people probably find me too ubiquitous, but to make a living these days, you need to work all the time. But I never do telly or anything like that. I mean,
You should do telly.
oh, too old. I don't really watch telly. I don't really understand it. Like, I
Mm.
don't know that I would. I always do radio because I love Radio 4 and I listen to it. And I first went on Woman's Hour when I was 8. Um, because I was in Birmingham, they did a lot at Pebble Mill and I didn't have an accent. So I think I was playing a Victorian schoolgirl or something, something like that. But so I love radio. But yeah, I don't think I'm. Funny enough, I was at dinner party a while ago, and someone went, "Oh, Hannah Betts. There's an amazing American journalist called Hannah Betts," and I went, "Is that because I think that? I mean, that might be me." Like, because I don't think there is another journalist called Hannah Betts. And she went, no, she's American and she's amazing. And I kind of went, well, and the friend who was hosting went, no, that is Hannah. She just writes kind of American. But she wouldn't believe it. And so, that was fine. I'm blushing because you said that. But I don't think I am that. I mean, no, I don't know. I mean, because I write a beauty column, I get recognized by very
Yeah.
nice women and lots of gay men, and that's nice. So they are my people. Oh, and the ghost podcast I went on, a lot of people who believe in ghosts as
Yes.
well.
So I want to
The
get on.
dead. We
I
should come
want,
back to the dead.
got to get back to death. Tell me about Troy, because I read a book on Troy when I was very little and have been obsessed with it ever since.
For me, it's I've it there actually there. Oh, I forgot there is another podcast. I did an oldie podcast on Troy because I've been there a couple of times.
Yes, I've been there.
Yeah, and it's just always, I wouldn't say it's haunted me. I've just always felt as if I know the story really, as if it's almost my story. Like I've never felt it. And funny enough, at college, a friend of mine, we'd never discussed this, but a friend of mine who's a mathematician had a dream about what was clearly Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, but it was set in my family home with my parents. And we'd never discussed it. And
Well, I mean, did your father, sacrifice one of his children and
well, I mean, my mother stopped talking to me because she was angry with my father for 10 years.
hang, she stopped talking to you?
Yeah,
But
yeah. Funny
why would
enough,
she stop talking to you if she was angry with your father? Or what do you?
well,
Hmm.
I think it was a bit of there were three of us in this marriage. I think, yeah, you're wincing as a therapist would wince. I mean, this is why I had therapy in my 30s because
Yeah, shocked therapist face.
yeah, are you going to do the double take? So I mean, I mean, obviously, that is a very stupid thing to do. But he'd had a stroke, so I think she needed someone to blame whilst looking after him, if that makes sense, because he was
Mm.
ill. I think I'd always been her husband, so I used to go to sort of parents' evenings with her sometimes for the other children. Not always, but I do remember doing that a couple of times. Um, and his wife. So I'd go to social events with him, particularly later on. So I think there was a point actually when I asked her, and she said she'd never seen me as when she had a grandchild who was 2, she realized she'd never seen me as a child, even when I was 2. And it was as near
Mm.
as she ever got to apologizing. And I said, do you think that's why you held me responsible for your marriage? Because I was another adult in the marriage as far as you were concerned. And she said yes. And in all my life, that's the only time she's ever addressed it. And that was when I was ill. So I think that there was a kind of, you know, moment of truth. But yeah, it was 10 years and she didn't want the rest of the family to see me either.
How does someone just not speak to you? Who's your mother? How is that even possible?
Well, within my family, it's really possible. My father, I mean, my mother's family, my mother didn't talk to her father for the last 12 years of his life. Her mother often didn't talk to her.
Okay.
My father and her father never spoke, although I did see them walk past each other once. And actually within so that's my mother's family. My
Mm.
father's family, my father didn't talk to his twin for the last 25 years of his life. So I now very much don't buy that as a strategy, if I ever
Yes.
did.
Yes.
And I think there's an awful way of it's an awful way of exerting control as well, because the other person is constantly agonized about you. And so
Mm.
you're kind of, I'm not talking to you, but I want to be foremost in your mind kind of thing.
Mm.
Like, I mean, because
Mm.
you could just talk to them a bit and tolerate them, but not really like them. But no,
Mm.
it's a way of kind of putting your, it's a way of communicating and putting yourself at the front. And also it was very one-sided because she still read all my journalism. So she got to hear from me.
Yeah, but you didn't get to hear from her.
No, and there is something very fundamental about the idea of your mother not loving you.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew rationally I knew rationally she loved me, but it manifested itself in such a twisted way. And it's very hard to feel lovable. I mean, it's such a fucking platitude, but it's hard to feel lovable full stop if you feel
Mm.
that your mother doesn't love you. And actually, the quote earlier I talked about my therapist in my 30s doing a double take was very early on. So I started having therapy a year into her not talking to me when I realized it was going to last. And the therapist just said something like, "Oh, tell me the first thing that comes into your head of something your mother said." And the first thing that came into my head actually was, "I don't love you. I've never loved you. I never will." And that's when she did her double take. And I don't think she was saying that to the rest of the children. I hope not. Um, and I think they had a very different relationship with her, and they don't like it when I talk about my relationship with
Yeah.
her because they
Mm.
remember her in different ways. And I
Yeah.
respect that. It must be awful to have someone talking about someone who died horribly and in this honest way. But that was my relationship with her. And I think it is, as I said, it's because she always saw me as an adult. So it did mean there were three of them in the marriage, so that when she was pissed off with him, she could drop me for 10 years. So we had 6 months. The 6 months she was dying, we were in contact then. So we had a kind of redemptive 6 months. And then she died. And then a year later, my father died. So um, that was a very intense period. And I suppose that was when I started really thinking about the dead and writing about the dead. And in various ways. So I didn't go to their funerals.
Mm.
That I wrote a sort of sensitive piece for the Times about that, where I thought it was sensitive. And then the Mail bought the same story, and the Mail presents things in slightly different ways. So much more of a clickbait headline. And
You remember what it was? Can't you? Can't.
I immediately want to go into parody mode and sort of say, you know, this ungrateful bitch didn't, and it
Yes,
wasn't
yeah,
that, but
yeah,
it wasn't that, but it
yeah. I
kind
can.
of
Yeah,
invited
yeah, it looked
a certain
heartless.
degree of below the line rage, which there was. Even though I'd kind of explained it wasn't at all that, it was because I felt it so deeply that I didn't
Mm.
want a public platitudinous naff. I couldn't do the kind of naff Birmingham cremation that I'd done for people I cared less about, for people who were everything to me. And so it was actually a mark of sincerity. And I did different things. So
Mm.
I did the coins for my father and different things for my mother and I mourned just as much, but in a private way. And I'm very private. I don't, which is ironic in my job, but I don't, for instance, I don't believe in marriage because I don't like public display. So funerals are the same. Well, I suppose what I should say is I don't believe in weddings or marriage. And the idea of a wedding fills me with horror in the way that it fills everyone else with happiness. The
Mm.
public investment in a relationship, no, thank you. And similarly, the public investment in your feeling about death. I'll go to funerals for other people. I would always support a friend at a funeral. I would be there. I do go to them. But if I'm mourning if I'm the mourner, no, that's not going to happen. It's just a piece
Did
of
you tell
decaying
your? Did you
bullshit.
say to your parents, "I'm not going to your funeral"?
No, actually, I didn't. And I don't think either of them would have given a flying fuck, actually. My
Okay.
brothers and sisters did care.
Mm.
Um, and I think they thought it was, they knew my reasons, I hope, but I think they thought it was strange. And people do find it strange if they find out. But I think also the fact that I didn't go to either of them, they at
Yes,
least
yes, it
realized,
wasn't pointed.
no, not at all. And it was about loving them equally and doing different things, doing it my way. Um,
But here's
but
an interesting thing that you see. So the therapist hat on.
yeah,
One,
please tell
well,
me I'm
one
mental.
thing is quite often we go to funerals for all sorts of reasons. I mean, one is to support the other people that we love,
Yeah.
like your brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in that because given the fact you looked after them, I'm interested that you sort of managed to go, actually, I can't come to these funerals to look after you through your grief because I have my grief.
Maybe I was finally accepting that they're adults and I should butt out of their lives. I mean, this
Mm.
great learning experience of the deaths, having being one of five, was such an amazing head fuck. Our reactions, finding out that we'd all had radically different childhoods.
Mm.
I mean, I'm 12 years older than the youngest, so we're quite close in age. Obviously, we're close genetically. I mean, you're closer to your siblings genetically than you are to your parents,
Mm.
because you've got
Interesting.
both and they only have one or whatever. And the way we mourned was radically different and led to an explosive argument a week after my mother's death because the boys were doing it one way and I was one of the boys in that sense, and the girls were doing it another way.
Mm.
And they thought we were animals and we thought, and we, I think by the time, so that was my mother's death. By the time my father died, I think we'd all realized that in a crisis we were all going to behave in radically different ways and it was all right and
Mm.
not to judge. But it's very hard if you think it's got to be dealt with one way and it's something
Mm.
as potent as death.
Mm.
And then you've got four other people doing radically different things. And I mean, part of the reason why my parents were good parents is we are all very different.
Yes.
Um, so I suppose this is you and I were emailing, I did say I didn't want to sound masochistic, but I do think death, which tends to happen to us in midlife, is this incredible learning experience and this Rubicon that you
Mm.
cross. And it happened to me. So I was 43 when my mother died and 44 when my father died. It's not that young. I mean, it's not
No,
7 or 8
that's right. Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
but it is younger than a lot of my Gen X friends who've got boomer parents who are still around.
Mm.
And I almost got to pull rank because it is a Rubicon you cross. And
Yeah.
then a lot of my friends since in the years since have, and the only thing I learned really is this is my one bumper sticker piece of wisdom is whatever you're doing, it's the right thing, which I suppose goes back to what I just said about five different siblings doing it the right way. Like if you need to just work through it, as I tried to with my father's death, and use that as a solace, do it. If you need to lie in a bath and eat Toblerone, then do it. If you need to, like you will find your way, and it's going to be individual. And it may not be going to a Birmingham crematorium. And another thing that offended me was that when my mother died, it had been the 6 months of absolute horror, both mentally and
Mm.
physically. And it was Rabelaisian. We sanitize
Mm.
death on the television, but it
Yeah, we
is
really do.
full of gore and pus and shit and piss and blood and all these Anglo-Saxon things that we try and forget about. And, we want a picture of a woman in a white dress looking beautiful and a bit ethereal. And no, it is not like that. And then I got all these messages from former neighbours genuinely saying, can't wait to see you at the party. And maybe 4-year-old me was so offended by that I thought, fuck you all. Like, no, I'm not going to meet you. I mean, in the wake and all this, we'll all get drunk and no, fuck off. I am not performing that. Am I a bad person, Lucy? You look
Yeah.
like you look
No,
concerned,
no, no, I'm not concerned. I'm listening. I think it's fascinating.
but bit unhinged.
No, we get to do it any way that works for us. It's an interesting thing because you don't believe in all sorts of things, but you have a relationship with times gone by, with people, with and they're dead.
Yeah, they don't feel very dead.
Okay, so it's not that you sort of see Odysseus coming, it's
Oh no, that. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do think about people like it is. No, I don't see them. There's no woo-woo.
right. So it's not sort of like I don't really believe in this, but goodness me, look at the
No, but they're very real to me. Like, I, it's much more, the Troy story is much more real to me. I don't know, what would the equivalent be? I mean, than the House of Windsor, or I don't know, what would it be?
well, that's tame, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
do,
it's
I,
an
I
amazing
suppose I do
story.
project my family onto them a bit. And
Do
there
you?
was a phase in my 30s actually when I used to meet people and I just wonder who they were in the Troy narrative and I define them that way. Yeah, maybe I do have this belief. I mean, when I did the ghost podcast, a lot of people then thought that I believed in ghosts. And it is very odd because I don't believe in ghosts, but all of that shit happened. Like when so I originally wrote about it for the Telegraph, and again,
Yeah.
they called and said, "Do you know anyone who's got a ghost story that you could talk out of them?" And I'd never written it because I didn't want to sound mad as a box of snakes. So I kind of said, "Well, I've got quite a good ghost story." And the good thing about our ghost story, funny enough, I did Danny, who does the podcast, he's amazing.
Just say this podcast, let people know what the podcast is. They can listen.
It's called Uncanny, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
going to be
brilliant, actually. I've listened to
oh,
most of
so
them.
good. And
Yeah, it's brilliant.
he's the sweetest man. I wouldn't have done it. He was asking me to do it
Yeah,
for
he's
years,
great. Yeah.
and I wouldn't have done it, but I knew I could trust him.
Yes.
And anyway, he does all these events, and we did one at the Guardian building with all these people. And my family and I, when we listen to some episodes of Uncanny, and it's my brother always parodies it as it'll be someone who went, "Oh," and then I had a funny feeling, and then and then the curtain moved. Whereas ours, we moved into that house when I was 16, just when I was
Mm,
doing my O levels. Last generation of O levels always dates me. I'm 54. And then we left the house 2 years after my father died. So when I was 46,
mm,
and even at the end, things were still happening. So, and it wasn't just us, it wasn't just a family thing. It happened to other people,
mm,
it happened to the people next door because it used to be one big house. Um,
mm, mm.
and I mean, consistency, it wasn't just a funny feeling. Anyway, so although I don't believe in them, I know that all that stuff happened.
What? Yeah, I mean, there's no other explanation.
No. And and part of me is kind of jealous. Like we were talking about a friend of ours who about another one of your episodes where a friend sees her dead sister.
Mm,
I when after my father died, I maybe I've watched too much Buffy the Vampire Slayer where they bring her back after she dies. But I remember lying in bed one time and just thinking I would give anything to be able
mm,
to have another conversation with him. And I remember physically
mm.
like sort of reaching up my hand like that and just thinking and maybe this is egotism, but well, it clearly is, but thinking I I can will him to take my hand.
I know. I
And
really get
I
that.
suppose I see now in ghost stories, I used to find them funny. I've written this in the Telegraph for Halloween in the past. I used to find
Mm,
them funny. And then I walked around Kensington Palace. I walked around Kensington Palace and the Tower, no, Hampton Court at midnight at Halloween. After my ghost story, I was sort of given other ghostly opportunities.
mm.
Hampton Court, oh my, no, sorry. Hampton Court obviously is very spooky, but Kensington Palace is oddly painful. Like no
Okay.
one who's lived there has been that happy. And
Mm,
it's very and Queen Victoria was there with and when she was mourning Albert.
Oh.
Stories about her and Albert, like she had a sculpture done of his ear, and she talked to psychics, and she was very, like, I think she slept with the sculpture of his ear, or it's all in this Telegraph piece I wrote. And she then thought he'd been reincarnated as a little boy, and like there's some really kind of odd things. But I couldn't laugh at them I went there after my mother had died, and I couldn't laugh at them. I couldn't find them
Mm,
funny because I felt the need. And death, another thing it teaches us, I think, is that it's probably the first non-negotiable thing that we
mm.
encounter. You can't I remember thinking it's the first thing
Oh, no.
I can't talk my way out of it.
Yeah.
Like, however much the shit has been hitting the fan, usually as humans we can talk our way out of it.
Mm,
Death is that thing. And I mean, neither of my parents had good deaths. We weren't able to give them that.
mm,
And they both had, I mean, my mother had a very aggressive cancer that kind of came from nowhere and swallowed her up, and was literally black and awful. And she really didn't want to die. She was um I remember a colleague of ours who you know well. I remember she was diagnosed on, I think, her wedding anniversary, 2 days before Christmas, and she died on the solstice, so it was 6 months. And she was basically dying every 3 days, and then she'd claw herself back. But
oh,
it was terrible. She really didn't want to die, and she would have done anything not to. And so our colleague, in about the April, she asked me if I could go she called and asked if I could go to Paris for something. And I said, I'm so sorry, I can't go. My mother, I think, my mother's dying. And she went, what, still dying? But it was like that. It was actually really, I know, I can see you realizing who it was as well. Um, but actually, I really admired it, because that was the awful thing about my mother's death, that it was happening every 72 hours for 6 months. And she just didn't want it. And it was a really awful cancer. And then my father kind of drank himself to death, but also
mm,
had turned out, when he died, he also had TB, because worked in the health service, and apparently everyone does. He also seemed to have cancer, which he hadn't told us, but he'd kept from us. He had something else. Like, he had a lot going on, but he basically drank himself to death. And then his actual death, he boiled to death in a bath.
oh
And
my God.
yeah, and
Oh my
it,
God.
yeah, it it's
Oh, that's terrible.
yeah,
I'm
really
sorry.
fucking awful.
That's
But
awful.
I did, 2 days before, I did get to talk to him about death, which doesn't make up for the horrendousness of the demise. I would have done anything to keep him from that. But
Oh my gosh, I'm
we
so
did speak
sorry.
about it. Thank you. We did speak about it, and
Mm,
he so the Saturday before, we were sitting on um like a changing blanket for a baby, a nappy blanket, because if you drink yourself to death, you shit yourself.
yeah.
And anyway, we were both sitting on a clean one, I hasten to add, reading the Times next to each other, which was a kind of a very happy place. And although he grew up being a Guardian reader, he changed to the Times when I started work there, and wouldn't say so, but was secretly very proud of that. And we were, anyway, reading the Saturday issue, and he sort of said, uh, out of the blue, I'm dying. And I'm really glad I didn't, how often when people say they're dying, everyone goes, no, you're not.
Well, no, I say, well, we're all dying, honey,
Yeah. But
but that's not helpful either.
I kind of let that sit,
Mm,
that he
mm,
said it, because he hadn't said it before.
mm,
And then I said, and are you scared?
mm,
He said, no, I'm really not. And it was actually, having that
mm,
was kind of everything. I hope when I'm dying, it's I hope it's more like my father's death, not the huge drama in the bath, but I hope I am able. The only time I've got close was my appendix exploded, and the doctor who saw me just before they knocked me out said, well, you know, it's pretty bad and you might die. And I laughed.
That's a very helpful thing to tell someone.
Well, I
just
think I
about being
have
knocked
to
out.
tell people.
Well, maybe not you, as you're about to go, or maybe kind of like not you.
No, but I laughed. And I mean, I'm sure the morphine had something to do with it. And he went, well, people don't usually laugh when I tell them that. And I said, yeah, but it's not my problem. I feel sorry for you. And also,
Oh, true, actually. What am I going to do about it?
yeah, it's like I can't fly a plane either. And also I didn't think I was sort of 40 and I wasn't leaving young children and I didn't have a partner at that point. And I thought it would be really sad for my father because this was before he died, and, you know, quite sad for my little brother. But it didn't feel like a massive tragedy. I mean, again, I was on morphine, but I didn't feel like, oh, there was so much more I had to do at all. But as I say, the drugs, maybe it was the drugs, but I wasn't. But then that can't be true, can it? Because some people get quite angry on morphine. I mean, people get quite punchy on it.
Do they?
Yeah. I mean, fisty punchy.
Fisty punchy. So just finally, because I know we could talk forever.
No, it's me. I'm just blathering.
No, you're not. No, and it's beautiful. But I mean, it's difficult because I'm completely kind of signed up woo-woo person, and I'm desperate to hear from my ancestors and the people that I love that are no longer.
Oh, as you say,
I'm
ancestors,
desperate.
my lovely little mini-me, my brother's daughter, she's got all these aunts and uncles, and she doesn't call us aunts and uncles, she calls us ancestors. So if she leaves us a voice message, she'll go, ancestors.
So you see, she's got it. She's attuned.
She also, and her mother, the other Hannah Betts, will hate me saying this, but she has actually, they go to a stone circle, and one time they turned around and she'd buried herself.
Perfectly rational thing to do.
I mean, as a sort of offering to the ancestors. So it's clearly back to Neanderthal Goths. Oh my God, we've come full circle. But I interrupted you. You were saying ancestors.
But I mean, so given the fact you've got all this going on, and you've got the fur cones, for someone that doesn't believe, there's a lot of belief around you. And I don't need to question that.
I think that's a really beautiful way of putting it.
And I don't think you need to really question that.
Yeah, or label it.
Yeah, you don't need to do that.
I quite believe in people. I mean, maybe that's an atheist thing as well, that if you don't believe in gods, you have to believe in humans.
We're going to have to finish. Now, listen, where can people find you? There's lots of podcasts.
Well,
there's Substack.
I don't do too many podcasts.
No, I mean, there's the Uncanny.
Sorry. So there's the Uncanny one. There's the Times one, which is called The Story, and it's called something like My Dead Drunk Dad and Me, or Not Drinking.
Your father, his alcoholism, and
and mine. I've been sober for 11 years.
Yeah.
There is one on Troy, which is the oldie, which I'd forgotten about, but about going to Troy, which everyone should do.
Yes.
I am on Substack. I'm also on Instagram. I actually got depressed in the summer. I took time out from Substack and I felt terrible because somehow Substack feels like the real me, not the journalistic me, and I just couldn't do it. And I felt like an absolute shit, and as if I conned everyone. But everyone was very nice about it. But I'm back on there now, and there's stuff about the ball. And to go with this podcast, I will write a little bit about death.
Oh, thank you, because I don't.
Oh, thank you. You're making me do it.
I don't do Substack. I'm not
Don't you? Well, you do this.
I do this.
And you're saving the bloody world, right?
And you have a web? No, they can find you on Substack and Insta.
Substack, Insta, and then I'm in the Times, the Telegraph. I'm sometimes in the Mail. I do a bit for Airmail. I'm promiscuous journalistically.
Thank you so much. Listen, we could talk for hours. We might have to do part 2.
Yes.
The rest is history. Right, I'm going to say goodbye to you. Then
Goodbye. Thank you for having me. Bye.